When I was only 8 years old, one of my best friends died. She was only 8 as well when she died from a heart attack. Pretty strange for a healthy girl, isn't it? But what's even stranger is what happened prior to her death. My name's Brenda. Growing up, I lived in a neighborhood that was rather quiet. Mainly old people lived there. I lived with my parents and my older sister Natalie, who is 9 years older than me. I went to school nearby where I met a girl called Summer. She was a lovely girl who had the same interests as me. We used to spend a lot of time together. She also happened to live only a few blocks away from my house. So we would not only spend time together at school, we would also play in the afternoons and weekends and, well, all the time. Summer and I knew each other since the first grade, and that's why we were such good friends. We used to play with other children, but it was mainly Summer and I. That is, at least until Allison came into our lives. Allison was a girl who transferred to our school when we were in the 3rd grade. She was rather different from the rest. She was not like the other girls. Let's just say that her behavior was not that of a kid. Allison dressed different. She always wore black clothes from head to toe. She even painted her nails all the time. And at that age, most girls don't care about such things, but she did. She also dyed her hair black. Most kids felt a little threatened by Allison's look, but it was not only that. She had a terrible attitude as well. She was very conceited and liked things her way. Thanks to that, Allison had no friends at school. Summer and I felt bad for Allison, so we were not that bad to her, but we still kept our distance. And one day, Summer went to my house just like every other afternoon, but when I opened the door for her, I noticed Allison was across the street, just staring at us. She waved at us in excitement, and I waved my hand back at her. And I let Summer in and I closed the door. And Summer told me that she had previously said hi to Allison when she saw her around, and that was about as much contact as she had with her. And we thought that had been it. Until the next day when Summer and I arrived to my house after an afternoon at the park just to find Allison in my living room. She was sat down on the floor with her legs crossed, and I noticed my mom was talking to an older lady whom she later introduced as Allison's mother. Mom mentioned how they were new in the neighborhood, so they decided to come to our house and introduce themselves, but it all sounded suspicious to me. Why did it all happen literally the next day after Allison found out where I lived? Allison's mom was very sweet, shy, and mild, almost the opposite to Allison. Around 15 minutes into the conversation, Mom sent us girls, including Allison, to serve a pie that Allison's mom brought. Summer and I went into the kitchen with Allison. She grabbed the pie and showed it to us. We have never interacted much with her, so we were all just a bit nervous. "Don't worry. This one isn't poisoned," she said as she laughed and grabbed a knife from the counter. "These knives aren't sharp enough. You really need to fix that, Brenda," she continued. I remember feeling so scared. There are not many 8-year-olds out there saying those kinds of things, and Allison was such a creepy little kid. Luckily, she just cut the pie and served it. Then we took it to our moms, and after eating it, Allison and her mom left. Later on that night, my mom told me I was going to have a couple of playdates a week with Allison, and I was furious. I told my mom all the reasons why I didn't want to spend time with Allison, but all she said is that those were the reasons why I needed to hang out with her. She explained how Allison's mom is worried that she has no friends and that no kid wants to speak to her. And that was the point of them coming to my house, since we were in the same class, lived in the same neighborhood, and were the only nice ones to Allison. Her mom thought it was a good idea for us to spend time together. Mom thought it was a great idea and agreed on my behalf, and I tried to convince her to forget about it. I even argued with her, but it got me nowhere, because she basically told me that if I didn't include Allison, I wasn't allowed to hang out with Summer after school anymore. I had no option but to agree. And plus, I was 8 years old. What was I really going to do? 2 days later, there was a knock on the door. It was Allison. I opened the door and let her in. At this point, I was home alone. We were going to the park, but had to wait for Summer. While we waited, Allison started asking me questions about my friendship with Summer. She also kept saying how her and I would be best friends, even more than Summer and I were. I just ignored these comments and tried to convince her to watch TV, but she was not letting it go. Summer eventually arrived and we played together the whole afternoon. We did this at least 3 times a week for almost 2 weeks, until that day came. I remember it perfectly. It was a Friday and it happened to be a very rainy day. Summer and I thought we were going to spend the whole afternoon together when we heard knocking on the door. We knew who it was, though we were not expecting her that afternoon. We opened the door just to see Allison wearing a black cape. It was not weird to see her carrying a bag, although she didn't want to tell us what was in it until we let her in. It was only Summer and I once again, because my parents and my sister were all at work, and I was having this bad feeling. I wanted to shut the door in her face, but then I remembered if I was mean to Allison, then my mom would prevent me from spending time with Summer, so I just let her in. In my room, Allison finally revealed what she carried. It was an Ouija board. Summer didn't even know what that was. I knew because once I heard my sister and her friends speaking about it. We didn't want to play with it, but Allison wasn't taking no for an answer. We went to my room where Allison set everything up. She sat right in front of the board and told us to sit on each side. We all had different emotions. I was afraid. Allison was dedicated to it, and Summer found it funny. It was always known that Allison disliked Summer, but she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Allison said she wanted to contact Greg, and we had no idea who that was. I just sat there hoping nothing would happen, but it did. The power went off. I wanted to check the rest of the house and the other houses around to see if it was just our house or if it happened in any other, but Allison yelled at me, telling me to sit down, and Summer told me to keep calm. She said it must have been the rain and thunder that caused it, and Allison got very upset at this. "It was Greg," she said in a high tone. "No, it wasn't," Summer replied back. "Ghosts aren't real, therefore they can't do anything," she added. "Oh, you want to bet?" Allison asked her. "Sure," Summer answered, completely confident in her answer. Allison spoke to Greg and asked him to manifest himself, though nothing happened. Summer laughed at Allison, saying she had won the bet. To my surprise, Allison didn't seem to care about it. Instead of being a spoiled brat or getting frustrated, she just sat there quietly. After a few minutes, she chuckled as she said it was time for her to go. She packed her things and turned to me and said, "I'll see you later." Curiously, after she left, the power came back on. Less than an hour later, my sister came home, but was feeling rather ill, and I asked her how she fared during the storm. My sister looked at me utterly confused. "What are you talking about? There was no storm." she said. And Summer and I didn't believe her. At least, not until she turned on the TV, just to show us the forecast. There was rain, but there were no thunders or any sort of lightning strike or storm at all. Summer and I were confused. We tried to explain to my sister what we've heard and seen. Of course, trying to avoid the fact that we've used an Ouija board. But my sister, who was feeling very bad that day due to a strong migraine, didn't pay attention to us. She told Summer to go back home to her own house, and that was it for the afternoon. Later on that night, my parents had to go to the hospital with my sister because her migraine was too bad, so I had to stay home alone again. I was not happy to stay alone, but I knew I had no choice. If I told them I was scared, they'd ask me why, and then I'd have to explain everything. I tried to sleep, but it was difficult. I was in bed looking at the clock, hoping nothing bad would happen that night. I could just sense there was something wrong ever since we played with that board. I don't know at what time I fell asleep, but I will never forget what happened when I woke up. At 7 a.m. the next day, I was awoken by my sister. I asked her how she was feeling. She said that she was better, but she looked very nervous. Her eyes would not meet mine, and she wouldn't stop touching her hands. With a croaky voice, she told me our parents needed to speak with me downstairs. As I went down, I noticed my parents were quietly sat in the living room. They looked strange. Not just tired, but they looked very sad. I sat next to Mom, who, between hugs and tears, told me what had happened. Summer had died. I broke down and burst into tears. Later on in the day, once I was better, I wanted to know the details. Mom told me yesterday when they went to the hospital, they saw Summer's parents were there, looking extremely worried. My parents reached out to them, and that's when they found out that Summer was taken to the ER after having something that looked like seizures. After some hours, the doctor told Summer's parents that Summer had died from a heart attack. They couldn't find out why she had one because she appeared to be healthy and didn't suffer from any sort of condition. I was feeling terrible. I wanted to forget about everything. I went back to my room to get some more sleep, and eventually my sister, who shared rooms with me, also went to our room. I looked at my sister from the distance and noticed she was very disturbed. I asked her what was going on, but she said it was nothing. But I knew she was lying. The next day, I went to the funeral where I saw Allison. She was sat next to me the whole time, but I wasn't paying attention to her. After the funeral, Allison and her mom went to my house. My parents stayed in the living room chatting with her mom as Allison and I were playing in the garden. I didn't really want to play, but my parents wanted me to stay active. As I stayed alone with Allison, she started acting all creepy. "Did you notice how I win?" she asked me. "What do you mean?" I asked her, confused. "How Greg did show up," she said. It took me a few minutes to understand what she meant by that, but then I remembered all that happened on Friday when we were using the Ouija board. I don't even know how, but I just left. I ran back to the house and locked myself in my room. Soon after Summer's death, I went back to school where I was greeted by Allison every single day. I was more than sure she had something to do with Summer's death, but there was no way to prove it. Plus, I was really worried about what could happen to me, so I stayed silent. Allison and I were friends for another couple of years after that. And luckily, when we went to high school, she moved somewhere else. I'm now 18 years old and about to go to the university. I've had a normal life, but I still remember and miss summer a lot, especially after my sister's confession to me last week. As we were celebrating me getting my GED, my sister and I were speaking about life, including our childhood, so the topic of summer got brought up. My sister's face soon became as sad and frightened as the day she came back from the hospital. I asked her once again what was going on. She started to cry and told me she would tell me the truth now, and that the reason why she didn't do it when I was younger was not to hurt me. She began to tell me that the night Summer died, you could hear Summer's screams all over the hospital. She kept moving as if she was having seizures, but she was conscious. Summer was screaming things, including obscenities and speaking in a foreign language. My sister told me Summer looked as if she had been possessed by the devil, and I just sat there, quietly listening to all the details, while trying to act normal, when I knew deep down what had happened. Spirits are real. One of them killed my best friend, and it was all Allison's fault. I would love to do something, but the truth is, I'm still afraid of that little girl, who is now an adult with an Ouija board.